couple things. Trustees, those of you that are on the trustee board, you have a meeting this afternoon in my office. It'll be right over here. So trustees, please plan on being there for that. And I don't think it'll be an especially long meeting, but I said that last time too. No, not really. But make sure to be there, and we can take care of business. Also, notice that on the 29th of this month, the last Sunday of this month, two things I want you to note. First of all, we're going to have a potluck following the morning service over at the Lighthouse, just right over here at the end of the parking lot. There'll be an outdoor potluck, weather permitting, and typically it does. So we want to welcome you and encourage you to come and bring something for that and be a part of that. And we're excited to have that go on. And before we do that, however, there will be, of course, the service. And then at the end of the service, we're going to vote as a congregation on the recommendation that has come to you from both the advisory board as well as the trustee board. I haven't officially polled the deacons, but I think they're in favor of it as well. But the folks that have the oversight of those kinds of areas are the trustees, and then, of course, the advisory board is leaders from all of the boards and all the committees of the church. So, and both of those boards, the advisory board and the trustee board, have unanimously voted to recommend, not to do anything because they can't, but to recommend to you that we go ahead with the purchase of that sign. And if you see in the back, as Val was saying, that First Baptist Church, Praise the Lord, we're selling those letters for $100 a piece. So if you want to, if you're able to, over and above your regular giving, buy a letter. We'll darken it in like the other ones are darkened in. And between that and we've got a party that's looking to fund about a third of what the cost of the sign is, a donor willing to do that, those two would pay for more than half of the cost of the sign. So we're excited about it. But so the 29th, 2 weeks from today, there will be a vote on the sign. And then after that, we will eat to our heart's content over at the Lighthouse. So we're excited about that, looking forward to that. Okay. And trustees, don't forget, my office. I'll probably come around you up afterwards if need be so we can get started so we can get done. That's always a good way to do it. Okay. We're looking at some prayers this summer from Scripture, doing some sort of standalone things. And the one theme that runs through this is the idea that we want you to be aware that this is the time for us to pray. We want to have a renewed dedication to prayer for one another, prayer for our church, prayer for the growth of our church going forward, both numerically as well as spiritually. So a lot of things to pray for, and we want to encourage you. We've sort of labeled this our summer of prayer. So let me encourage you to make prayer a part of your routine. But don't make your prayer routine, okay? Make your prayer very specific and focused, and God will bless accordingly. I want to share with you this morning a prayer that's actually found a couple times in Scripture. It's found here in 2 Kings chapter 14, but it's also found in Isaiah in chapters 36 and 37. Excuse me, the same story is told of good King Hezekiah. Right now, let's talk a little bit about where we are in this time of Israel's history. We're right around, if you can remember, a nice round number of 700. Okay? Does that make sense? Good number of 700. I'm going to move this out of the way here so I don't trip over whatever. Okay? 700 BC, right? 700 BC was a very tough year for the people of God. Specifically in 722 BC. Remember, the bigger the number, the longer ago it is, because the numbers BC count down, right, to 1, and then the numbers AD add up from there, right? So we're looking at a text about 700 BC. About 22 years earlier, the same nation of Assyria that we're going to read about here had come and had conquered the entire northern kingdom of Israel. Remember, the kingdom of Israel split into Israel to the north and Judah to the south, and that was in about 931 BC. So a little over 100 years earlier, this had happened. And now in 722 BC, the nation of Assyria has conquered and taken captive, taken into exile, the northern kingdom of Israel. And they never really officially returned as a kingdom again. What we're looking at this morning is about 22 years after that, in the year 700. For those of you that are familiar with world history, and Tom, you'll relate to this, I'm sure, Neville Chamberlain, who came back from negotiating with Adolf Hitler with a signed piece of paper saying Hitler has promised he won't attack any more countries other than the ones that he's already conquered. And everybody's like, yeah, right, okay? But Chamberlain and others believe that. If you've never had a chance to see the movie called Darkest Hour, it's about Winston Churchill. It's a great film. I highly recommend you see it. It's especially if you're a younger person, learn a little bit about what it took to get us the freedom that we have today. A great movie, okay? Well, the Assyrians were the same way. They conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, but they weren't going to stop there. They kept going. And in fact, what happened, they conquered the tribe of Judah, the nation of Judah, and they got to the point where they were around the walls of the city of Jerusalem. These are huge walls, very tall, very thick, so you can't just attack. Very oftentimes a nation would lay siege, all right? They would put their armies all around the wall, and they would make sure that no one or no thing got in or got out. So, no water. You better have enough water inside, which is why the people of Judah built Hezekiah's tunnel, okay? Because they had all the water they needed. Most nations didn't. Once your water runs out, once your food runs out, you're pretty desperate. But you're being laid siege to. Now, what happened here in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 14, is the nation of Assyria had conquered all of the land, if you will, all the territory of Judah, and now they were ensconced around the wall, and they were just waiting out the people inside. And they were taunting them. Their leader, the military leader, was called the Rabshakeh, like a general. He was taunting them. They were sent by their king, Sennacherib. And by the way, great job on name pronunciation today. I threw you some real curves there, didn't I? Okay? But Sennacherib and Hezekiah, even cherubim, which is a tricky word. But that's where they are. That's where they are when we find them. They are being laid siege to. Now, their king at this time is a man named Hezekiah. Hezekiah is one of the most godly kings the southern kingdom or the nation of Israel, period, ever saw. He was a very godly man. He made some mistakes. Probably his most notable mistake was when he accepted, sometime not long after this, the king of Babylon came over, and he brought him in. You know, they had a summit, what it was, okay? And they came together, and he showed the king of Babylon all the temple and all the riches and all the inside places there at the nation of Judah in the city of Jerusalem. And through the prophet Isaiah, God says, what are you doing? And he says, you know, you've done this out of pride. You want to show off to the nation of Babylon, to the king of Babylon. And because of this, not during your lifetime, because you've served me, but later on, the king of Babylon will come and he will take all this stuff captive, and he will destroy the temple and destroy the city of Jerusalem. And the only thing that Hezekiah said in his heart after that was, well, at least it's not going to happen during my lifetime. So, bottom line is he wasn't a perfect king, but he was one of the most godly kings that Judah ever had. So, what happens here, we have to kind of look back just a little bit. We have to look at 2 Kings 19 and really go back to, we can go back to about verse 9. Okay. It says in verse 9, Now Sennacherib was the ruler of Assyria. He was the enemy king. Now Sennacherib received the report that Tirhakah, the king of Cush, Cush, by the way, is another name for, anybody know? Ethiopia, okay? It's an African country that's close to where Israel is. Now, Tirhakah, the king of Cush, was marching out to fight against Sennacherib, so he again sent messengers to Hezekiah with this word. This is the king of Assyria speaking. Say to Hezekiah, king of Judah, do not let the God you depend on deceive you when he says Jerusalem will not be given into the hands of the king of Assyria. He's taunting. We would say today, he's talking trash. Okay? This is like a couple of NBA players going down the floor, just jawing at each other. Okay? Don't let anyone deceive you. Don't let your God, who you depend on, deceive you when he says Jerusalem will not be given into the hands of the king of Assyria. Surely you have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all the countries, destroying them completely. And will you be delivered? So Sennacherib sends the message saying, you know, if you think that your God's going to save you, he's just fooling you. And by the way, there have been a lot of other nations that I've destroyed besides you guys. And you're just next on my list. So don't think for a minute that you're going to get away with this. Did the gods of the nations that were destroyed by my predecessors deliver them? Of course, the answer to that question is no, they didn't. Then he says, the gods of Gozan, Haran, Rezeph, and the people of Eden who were in Tel Assar. Where is the king of Hamath, or the king of Arpad? Where are the kings of Lair, Sepharvaim, Hena, and Iva? You ever heard of those places? I had neither until I read this. Okay, why? Because they're gone. They've been wiped out. They've been destroyed. And so this king of Assyria, Sennacherib, along with his generals, says, look, don't think that your God is going to deliver you from me. Look at all these other nations. They have gods too. We've destroyed their gods. We threw their gods into the fire. They didn't protect them from us. And your God's not going to protect you from us either. In fact, if you think your God is going to protect you from us, he's telling you that maybe, but you're being deceived. You're being fooled. Your God is going to destroy you. Now, if you're Hezekiah, what do you do? Your nation has been devastated. Your fields have been burned, laid waste, and here you are holed up in the city of Jerusalem with these walls around the city, and the whole Assyrian army is gathered outside just waiting you out until such time you finally give up, and they are going to destroy you. And they taunt them. In fact, at one point in the Isaiah narrative, the leader of the Assyrian army taunts the people of Judah by saying, you're not going to have anything left to eat or drink but your own waste. That's what he says. Isaiah 36:12. Look it up. Okay. And so what does Hezekiah do? Well, there's all kinds of things he could do. One is he could be appeased. Did I just die there? There we go. Okay. I didn't die, but my sound died. Okay. Right? Okay. You can hear me now, right? Okay. I'm back on. All right. So what does Hezekiah do? He prays. He prays. He prays to his God. This is a far more dreary and threatening situation than you and I could ever conceive of or imagine. But that's what he does. Let's look at the passage, okay? Hezekiah received the letter from the messengers and read it. This was a letter that the Assyrian general sent to Hezekiah and said basically what he's taunted them. We're going to destroy you. We're going to wipe you out. Don't think your God is going to deliver you. Don't let him deceive you like that. Do you know the list of nations that we've destroyed? Do you know the number of gods that we have destroyed? You know the number of gods we've thrown into the fire and destroyed? You just happen to be next. And at one point, they yell down from the walls and they say, don't speak to the people in Hebrew. They can understand that and they'll be discouraged. Speak to us in Aramaic, because the people inside the walls, they don't know that language, and they won't be able to hear it, and they won't be discouraged. And the leader says, I'll speak whatever, essentially, he says, I'll speak whatever language I want. And he goes on, and he insults them, and he mocks them, and he taunts them. Then he sends a letter. He sends a letter to Hezekiah. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to destroy you. He details very carefully what he's going to do. So Hezekiah received the letter from the messengers and read it. Then he went up to the temple of the Lord and spread it out before the Lord. Spread the letter out before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed to the Lord. He said, Lord, the God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim. That's a reference to the Ark of the Covenant. You got the Ark of the Covenant, you got the Bema seat in the middle, and you got the two cherubim, the two cherubs, if you will. Cherubim is the way the Hebrew made plural. They added I-M to the end of a word. So cherub becomes cherubim. So we would say cherubs. There's one on each side, and the presence of God dwells in the middle of that Ark of the Covenant. And he says, Lord, the God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim, you alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Give ear, Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, Lord, and see. Listen to the words Sennacherib has sent to ridicule the living God. Remember, Sennacherib is the Assyrian king. He has spoken things and written things to ridicule you and to ridicule us, but most of all to ridicule you. It is true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste these nations and their lands. They have thrown their gods into the fire and destroyed them, for they were not gods, but only wood and stone. I mentioned this to you before, but there's a passage in Isaiah where Isaiah taunts the people of Israel, people of Judah, for worshiping idols. And he said, you people are so foolish. You cut down a tree, and you take half of that tree, and you craft it into an idol. And you take the other half of the tree, and you make firewood out of it, and you use that firewood to heat your food and to cook your food and do the other things. And then you take the other half of the tree after you've carved it and you worship it and say, oh, you're our God, deliver us. And Isaiah taunts the people of Judah by saying, what if you got the two halves of the tree mixed up? What if you accidentally took your God and cut your God up and then burned him? And what you're really doing is worshiping your firewood. And he basically says, you're foolish. You think that a God that you have made can deliver you? Even if you got the two halves of the tree correct, what makes you think that that God can deliver you? That's the kind of gods the Assyrians have as well. They have thrown their gods, and not only the Assyrians, but the nations that they conquered. They have thrown their gods into the fire and destroyed them, for they were not gods, but only wood and stone, fashioned by human hands. Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God. It's an amazing prayer. Let's look at just some highlights of this prayer in the time that we have left. Okay? First of all, Hezekiah's first response was to lay this letter out before God and to pray. What was this letter? This was a letter from the king of Assyria. This was the talking trash letter. This was the taunting letter. By the way, I know that you're trying to get some other nation like Cush to come and help you, but it's not going to matter. Look at all these other nations, and he lists nations, he lists kings, and he says, I destroyed all of those. I took their gods and threw them into the fire. What makes you think I won't do the same with you? What makes you think, why would you listen to your God when he's telling you this? Don't you realize your own God is deceiving you? How foolish is that? He takes this letter and he lays it out before God. I mentioned, I believe it was last Sunday, I love the statement in 1 Peter where it says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you at the right time, casting all your cares upon him, because he cares for you. Casting all your cares upon him, because he cares for you. The best way you and I can demonstrate our humility, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, is by casting all our cares upon him. Now, there were a lot of things Hezekiah could have done in this situation. He could have consulted his advisors. He could have taken a Gallup poll of the people. What should we do? He could have mobilized his army. He could have said, well, by golly, we're going to fight back no matter what. He didn't do any of that. What's the first thing he does? He takes the letter and he lays it out before God on the ground and he prays. And he basically says this, says, Lord, look at what they've written about you. I didn't say this. This is what they're saying about you. They're not saying it about me. Oh, they might be, but they really aren't. They're saying this about you. This is what they're saying about you. Lord, I want you to see this, and I want you to deliver us. Look at verse 14. Hezekiah received the letter from the messengers and read it. Then he went up to the temple of the Lord and spread it before the Lord. He basically took his problem that he could do nothing about, and he put it in full view of God, and he committed himself to God. What kinds of struggles are you going through right now? I've been impressed, and I've been thinking a lot lately about all the things that go on in our lives that we can't do anything about. I remember when Nancy first was having struggles with her back, and she had one night in particular that was especially difficult, and she was crying, and she was in incredible pain. And you want to do something to help, but guess what? You're worthless in that scenario. Not worthless, but in that sense you are. There was nothing I could do. I think I was reminded a little bit this morning. I woke up about 2:30 this morning. Every once in a while, it's not very often, maybe once or maybe twice a year, I get a little bout of vertigo, which is really interesting. Okay? I feel like I'm standing still, but the whole place is moving, So I woke up about 2:30 this morning, and I got, whoa, what's going on here? And I'm not 100%, but I'm much better than I was. But I realized how just a little messed up thing in your inner ear, I was diagnosed with this a long time ago. It's called BPPH, benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. Sounds really fancy, okay? What it means is every once in a while you get really dizzy and we don't know why. Isn't that encouraging? I thought doctors knew everything, right? Every once in a while you get dizzy and you don't know why. And it goes away. And sure enough, a few hours later it does. Okay? Now, when I first started getting it in my 30s, it was really extreme. And I remember one night I'm laying there looking at the alarm clock to see what time it is. and the clock's going shoom, 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 like this, you know. In fact, my doctor said it would have been fun to take a look at your eyes and see what they were doing, you know. I said, well, look bad enough from this side. I don't know what you would have seen from your side. But what was it? I couldn't do anything about it. There's nothing I could do about it. And some of you are going through all kinds of challenges, and guess what? There's nothing you can do. I mean, there's, you know, well, be careful, take this medication or whatever. But there's really nothing you can do to correct the problem. So what do? You lay it before the Lord. You show it to Him, and you pray. It's always the best place to start. Why in the world would you try to keep your problems to yourself when you can cast them all upon Him? And you can show your humility. Remember I said last week, if I were to look at my bills and say, I got too many bills, I'm going to start passing them out in the congregation. Would you pay this bill? Would you pay this bill? Would you pay this bill for me? You would think I was the most arrogant thing to ever walk through the doors of this church. And you'd be right. But yet with God, we can do that. Lord, I can't. I need help here. There's nothing I can do. So I can't help me. I can't help my wife like I'd like to. There's all kinds of you that I can't help. Maybe you can't help yourself, but you know what you can do? You can pray. Lay it out before God. Let me encourage you to do that this morning. If there's something going on in your life, whatever it is, maybe it's a physical ailment, maybe it's an emotional problem, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a job situation, maybe it's like I got too much month left at the end of the money, you know, kind of thing. Lay it out before God and pray. Second, Hezekiah began his prayer by acknowledging the greatness of God. Now, he did that probably in part, I'm guessing, because of what Sennacherib had said. Your God, he can't do anything. I've conquered other gods just like him. There's nothing he can do. And so he says in verse 15, says, Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, Lord, the God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim. You alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. You know that guy Sennacherib over in Assyria? Yeah, you made him. You know the struggle. You know that army that he's got? That thousands, hundreds of thousands of men in his army? Yeah, you made them. Everything that's out there is only there because God has made it. And for anyone to think that somehow the creation has greater power than does the Creator is seriously wrong. So he acknowledges that God is enthroned between the cherubim. He honors God. He alone is God over all the world. He is the Creator. He is the one who made heaven and earth. By coming to Him and asking for help, you are not imposing upon Him, you are honoring Him. You are acknowledging that God is great, that God is greater than any problem you could ever have. Let me say that again. God is greater than any problem you could ever have. Why wouldn't you take it to Him if this is who He is? I mean, maybe you believe that your God is like the gods of those nations that's made out of wood and stone and got thrown into the fire. Or maybe you're trusting in things that are like that and they're not going to help you. But if you understand that you worship a God and you serve a God, He is the Creator. He is the one true God, the one true Creator. Well, you talk about something that's politically incorrect. There is only one God, and there's only one way to that God, and that is through His Son, Jesus Christ. I didn't make that up. That's not original with me. I found it in a really good book, by the way. I recommend to you. Okay? Found it in the Bible. So he acknowledges who God is. He doesn't rush to ask God for deliverance. He shows God the problem. He understands that God has a handle on it, and then he acknowledges the greatness of God. Thirdly, he asks God to be attentive and to listen to the taunts of the enemy. It's interesting the way he phrases that here. He says, give ear, Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, Lord, and see. Listen to the words Sennacherib has sent to ridicule the living God. It's almost as though, if you can imagine, and you really can't imagine this, but that God is not listening. His eyes are closed. Remember when Elijah went into that confrontation with the prophets of Baal to see who could bring fire to burn on the altar? And Elijah was taunting the prophets of Baal. Hey! Because they were calling, oh, Baal, Baal, come down and do this, set fire this. And Elijah's saying, maybe you ought to do that a little louder. Maybe he didn't hear you. Maybe your God is asleep. Okay? Maybe your God is just kind of disconnected. Maybe he's deaf. Maybe he can't hear you. At one point in the prayer, he says, maybe your God is off somewhere relieving himself. Well, that's mockery, isn't it? Okay. Maybe your God is doing this. And that's essentially what he's saying. This is what Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, is saying. Lord, I don't want you to be deaf. I don't want you to be blind. I want you to open your ears. I want you to open your eyes and see and listen to what it is the king of Assyria is saying. Now, he also, number 4, he does give what I like to call a realistic assessment of the situation. Was Sennacherib lying? Well, maybe part of what he said was a lie. Oh, your God, he can't stop me. I stopped all these other gods. I'll stop yours. Your God is trying to fool you. Your God is trying to sell you. No, none of that's true. When he talked about his conquests and the nations that he had conquered, those things were true. Look at verses 17 and 18. It is true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste these nations and their lands. So he's not bragging. He's not inflating the list. It's true. He has. This is what he's done. He has conquered these nations. They have thrown their gods into the fire and destroyed them, meaning that the Assyrians have thrown these idols, these gods of the various other nations into the fire, and they have destroyed them. Yep, they have done that. For they were not gods at all, but they were only wood and stone fashioned by human hands. In other words, the enemy is real, okay? The enemy is real, and they're powerful, and they have indeed. What he says about their exploits, once you filter out the arrogance about how much greater he is even than you are, God, then what he's saying is basically true. He's not making this up. Okay. Fifth and finally, he asks for God's deliverance so that God alone may be glorified. Verse 19, Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God. Now, there were a number of ways he could have ended this prayer. He could have said something like this. Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand so that everyone will see how blessed we are and what you've done for us. He could have said, Lord, deliver us from his hand so that we will do well, so that we will be safe and we will be protected, so that we can taunt him in exchange. Oh, yeah? Think you're so tough, big guy? Look at this. He doesn't say any of that. What he says is this. He says, Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God. He asks for God's deliverance not simply for his own sake or for the sake of his people, Judah, but he asks for God's deliverance so that the greatness and the might and the power and the strength of God will be evident to all, so that they will see that indeed the Lord is God and not we ourselves. He will see that the Lord is greater than the gods of those nations that he has conquered. He will see that the Lord is greater than the gods of the Assyrians, because he is the creator God, he is the redeemer God, he is the covenant-making and covenant-keeping God. This is the God that he serves. Lord, I want you to answer this prayer, not because it makes me look good. I want you to answer this prayer, Lord, not because it makes the people of Judah look good, but I want you to answer this prayer so that the glory may go entirely to you and to you alone. I want God to bless First Baptist. I really do. But I don't want God to bless First Baptist simply so that people will look at that and say, oh, look at First Baptist. I want God to bless First Baptist so that we can be a testimony to the greatness of the God that we serve. That's why I want God to bless us. It's not about you. It's not about me. I've often thought about, what it's going to be like when we stand before the throne of God. The judgment seat, the Bema seat, where all of our works, all of our lives will be assessed and evaluated. You realize as a pastor, I get to go to the head of the line for that. And that I'll have way more rewards than any of you. Not necessarily, okay? I think we're going to be surprised. I think we're going to be shocked when we see the rewards that are passed out. There are going to be people, I think, that were there that were never even noticed. Nobody really saw them, but they did a mighty work for the kingdom. They'll be like the widow that brought the 2 little coins. All the men of Judah brought all kinds of money, and they put it in the offering for the temple. Okay, this is an appropriate allusion to make on Loose Change Sunday. Okay, so feel free to drop off your loose change in the back when you leave. The nice, loud money, that we like the quiet money too. That's a joke. That's a joke. Okay, just relax. Okay, don't. It's Loose Change Sunday. Feel free to give whatever you can. But that lady comes and she puts 2 little coins, and I'm sure there were lots of people who are thinking, oh, wow, what difference is that going to make? And Jesus commends her above everybody else. Why? Because she's given everything. So we don't want for us to be glorified. That's not the purpose. The purpose of what we're doing here is to God be the glory, great things he has done. That's the purpose. That's why we serve. So if you want to notice, take a look at the back of the notes that I gave you. You'll see right up here it says my prayer list. Okay? I filled out mine a little bit. I put some things out and I said, Nancy for her back surgery. Okay? My brother-in-law Greg, who's 70 years old, had a stroke this week, and he's in Mary Free Bed, and they're doing rehab for him. Don't know how he's going to wind up, but I put him down. My son and daughter-in-law and my 2 grandchildren, Jack and Rye, I put their name down. And then I put First Baptist down. And there are other ones that I could put here. But what I want you to do is this, and whether you do it actually or whether you do it in your mind or heart, I want to give you opportunity, okay, to take your prayer list. What are the things that you need God to help you with? What are the struggles? What are the challenges? What are the pains that you just can't do anything about? Your situation is not as dire, but you're kind of like Hezekiah. There's really nothing you can do. I mean, the threat is there. The letter has been delivered. All the nasty threats are there, and they're just waiting outside the city wall to get through. Once you starve, you're starved out. They're going to come. And what are you going to do? I want you to do what Hezekiah did. I want you to write down on this list what you need to pray for. And then I want you to take that list, and I want you to lay it before God and say, Lord, there's nothing I can do about this. I'm not a back surgeon. Now, I can pray. Of course I can pray. It's the most important thing I can do. But I can't do anything. I'm not empowered to do that. Only God is. God sometimes heals directly. Sometimes he heals through doctors and nurses and medication. I can't do anything for my brother-in-law other than pray for him, encourage him. But I need to pray for him. So I put his name on here. My son and daughter-in-law and my 2 grandchildren. Okay? They live 2 hours away. They're both pushing 40. And our grandkids are double digits now for the first time, 10 and 12, It's amazing how fast the time goes. What am I doing? I'm praying for them. I'm praying for them. And then First Baptist Church, and I know there are all kinds of you that have struggles and pains and heartaches. And some of you have let us know. Some of you have not let us know. Maybe you will be letting us know about some things. I don't know. But what I want you to know is put it on your prayer list. Lay it before God and say, I want to humble myself under the mighty hand of God, that you may exalt me in due time. I want to cast all my cares upon you, because I know you care for me. Lord, I got some names here. I can pray. That's all I can do. If anything's going to happen, it's going to have to be you that does it. And so you have your list, and I have mine. And I encourage you to put that list before God and encourage him and plead with him. Because in one sense, prayer is the only hope we've got. So what is your prayer life like? Is this the summer of prayer? What do you want to write down and pray over? Then you can lay before God and bring to his attention. Let me challenge you to do that this morning. Okay? Our God is a great God, and he answers our prayers. Let's pray.